Hi everybody, thanks for coming in to check out this workshop. This is an old finish that I've been doing for years and have taught in many of my workshops, and we also put this recipe in our brochures. Every time you order something, this is in our brochures with the little how-to. But there's nothing like a little video that you can play over and over to figure something out. So that's why we've created this here. So the very first thing you do is we fill the holes where the handles went on this drawer, and I do that on just about everything when I get started. That way I have the luxury of putting handles right where I want them instead of being stuck with whatever the holes were to begin with on the previous handle. Oh, and just so you know, we used our texture paste for the filling the holes. And here we're just base coating with a flat finish paint. Something that's a good bonding paint will work. Wood icing always works real good with a flat finish. Okay, before we get to the fun part, I'm going to show you how to create your own tree bark tool. And for this you can use a used sponge roller, or you can use a brand new one. That you can buy them in a package. They're fairly cheap, so it's not a big deal. But really, what we're after is the roller. We don't need the foam. And once you have all the foam removed, then I use a sanding block. It's just a little easier to manage. You don't mar up your fingers as bad if you can just lay it down on a sanding block and go to it. And it really doesn't take that long. So the next thing you're going to need is a pile of rubber bands. And these are the thin ones. I usually use about 4 of these per section. I just pick up about 4 of them and I start wrapping them around it, starting in the middle, like you're putting on a ponytail. And then you want to put it back on the roller and make sure it rolls nice and easy, and you're ready to go with your project. We are ready to apply our texture paste to create the tree bark finish. So what I'm doing here is using a trowel. You can put this on with any kind of tool that works for you. Some people use credit cards, some people use these plastic spreading tools, cake decorating tools. We have a small spatula that we use. It's a stainless steel spatula, like you can see it in the photo here. It depends on how big the project is. If I were doing the side of a entertainment center or a wall or something, I'd definitely go with the trowel. So it's really whatever tool works for what you're working on. Okay, so my rule of thumb on how to spread the paste and how thick to spread it, I spread it to where I can't see through it. And I know that sounds a little vague, but you really don't want it too terribly thick, just because it doesn't look like it belongs where you've just put it. It just looks like some kind of big glob that you added, and you can't really make the edges nice and clean and straight. However, there are some instances where you're going to want it thick, so each piece will be different and whatever design you're going for. But the first rule of thumb I would say is just cover it completely. Make sure you don't see any dark spots through it or anything like that, but don't make it too thick. Sometimes stamps and things like that are a little harder to manage if it's too thick. Okay, so what you see here is we have our tree bark tool that we made earlier, and I always wet it with a little bit of water. You can spray the water on the paste as well. Either way is fine. Sometimes the water on the paste will, I don't know, it makes it a little too slick. You don't really get as much texture that way. So I always try without water on the paste first. If that doesn't work, then I spray it with water. And what you see happening here is some holes are being made. The tool is lifting the paste right off the base. In this particular design, that's going to be a plus. That's going to add to our finish, and you'll see why once we stain it. If that happens, though, and you don't want it to, you may need to respread the paste, or just go over it with your trowel and spray a little bit of water on it and the tool, and then be more gentle about how you're rolling that tool in there. But for the tree bark, it always works well for it to lift off a little bit in some of those spots. It makes the bark look more authentic. Another way to correct that problem is to put a thin coat of paste just straight down. Nice thin coat, let that dry, and then come back and do your second coat so you won't be lifting that paste completely down to the base. Okay, we've got this all done. Now we're going to set it aside and let it dry. Now we're just going to sand the surface. Hi everybody, we're ready now to stain or glaze our tree bark finish. We're going to use our tree bark color, and it's named that because we created it for this particular finish. We're going to use it straight out of the bottle. We don't dilute it or anything. We just dip it straight into dip the brush straight in and apply it kind of heavy. You can see that here. And you want to make it kind of get it down into the crevices and the cracks and everything. The only way to do that is to put it on nice and heavy like we're doing here. And you basically spread it all over, leaving it kind of wet. Now, I do one section at a time when I'm doing a piece of furniture. So I'll do a drawer at a time, then I'll do the sides and the top, or however that works. But I do one step at a time. That always works better because this glazing color dries pretty fast. And once you get the glazing color spread out nice and even, you make sure it's in all the little nooks and crannies. Then you take a soft cloth or a paper towel and you go over, clean up the edges, and then just blot the excess color. And see, here I am folding the paper towel, and I'm laying it flat right across the top because I don't want to dig the color out of the grooves and the crevices. I want that to stay in there, but I do want to pull it off the top so that highlights the texture even more. You can see that kind of happening as we go here. Okay, something I do see my students do sometimes is they'll make a big wad with the paper and just dig right in, and it's almost like they're pulling all the color off, and then you have no dimension when you get done. So you're working on creating the texture to be more visible, and we will finish it with a layer of our top coat polyacrylic, and I would probably use the dull. But I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you create many things with this tree bark. It's really a fun finish.